All right, let's go. You mentioned you think the Lions and Packers might be the best teams in the NFC. Should we go number 1 seed? I'll throw out mine. I'm gonna go Lions. I just think the NFC is so much weaker than the
It
AFC
is.
overall. Like, there's a lot of good teams, but I obviously think the 49ers are coming back to the pack if I have the Seahawks winning the division. And the Lions are the team, it sounds so crazy to say, that I just trust the most. That if you told me they had a losing record more than any team in the NFC, it would surprise me. So ultimately, I'm just gonna put my faith in continuity in this system being really ready to go both sides of the ball, really like the Lions on both sides of the ball. I'm gonna go Lions 1 seed.
I picked that as well. I hate that we've agreed on almost everything to this point, but I do agree with you. I also, if the Trent Williams and Brandon Ayuk situation weren't unfolding, I would have picked the 49ers here, but I picked the Lions. Line play, quarterback has certainly raised the floor from several years ago. And they have their faith in him as a city, and as a team. Coordinator continuity, fix some of the holes in their defense.
I mean, the secondary, they addressed it so well.
I love that their
did.
biggest problem this summer was like, oh, who's our third receiver? You know, like that's luxury now for the Lions. That's what we're asking. Like, that's a good football team.
They brought in Tim Patrick,
Love that.
rather,
How about that?
and their practice squad. So that's just
That's
something to
a
watch.
guy who can dig out a safety or two. They're going to use him.
Yep.
Coming off some big injuries, but that would be great to see Tim Patrick in a big spot. They need Jameson Williams to come through, but I think they will. Why are you so high on him, Keegan?
On the Lions, I think the secondary, as you said, I think that's gonna allow Terrell Austin for the first time in his few years as a coordinator to lean more into man coverage, which I think he wants to play, and he's shown that over the course of the years. And they've just struggled to do that. I mean, when you had who was the guy? Who were their cornerbacks last year? I can't even.
They all got hurt. Emmanuel Mosley was in and out. He's
Yeah,
out now.
he's
Cam
out
Sutton
for a year.
was.
And real quick, Aaron
Trevor.
Glenn is the DC there. Terrell Austin's in Pittsburgh. Yep.
Anyone have a different number
I do.
1 seed?
I do.
All right.
Ooh.
Well, we both do.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I'm going with the Packers.
Okay. Wow.
I'm betting on second half of the year. Jordan Love. You want to talk about stats? He was second in EPA over the second half of the season. After starting, I think he had 1 or 2 games with above a 50% success rate in his first 8 games. Finishes the year 7 of his last 10 above that. He ends up top 5 in that metric in terms of consistency, because that's what was lacking over the first. You saw the flashes over the first 8 weeks, but the consistency, the getting rid of the ball quickly, trusting the short game, and trusting his receivers. I think all of his receivers are so young. I mean, that was one of the youngest receiving cores last year. Hopefully, they all take a step up. I love Jaden Reed this year. In terms of his dynamic abilities, that tight end room. I mean, Tucker Kraft and Luke Musgrave is awesome. Always have one of the best offensive lines. And now, you get Josh Jacobs, probably a little out of lateral move from Aaron Jones, but he might stay in the field more. The defense, I'm a little bit more worried about, but I trust that offense to be among, a top 3 unit in the league, and I'm going to ride them.
Man, they would be feeling like they're just so back if they're a
Hey,
1 seed
can you
with this
imagine?
age. It's just crazy. Randy's going crazy back there. Yeah.
Oh, I'm going off the grid
Okay.
with my number 1 seed. And I know you talked about you didn't love them. I think the Eagles are going to be the number 1
Thought about him. Yeah.
because they play in a division where I think they honestly could be the only team from their division to get into the playoffs. Right? The other 2 teams could each have 2. Even if you go to the South, you could say Atlanta and Tampa. You talked about Green Bay in Detroit in the North. And in the West, you could have your choices of Seattle, the Niners, and the Rams. So that's why I think the Eagles are going to have an easier opportunity to become the number 1 seed if some of those injuries in those key spots, they can't be weak up the middle on defense. And right now, that's a soft spot potentially.
They are thinner than they've been. They used to have the big rotations, and they have a coordinator now in Vic Fangio who doesn't really rotate as much. So it's a different philosophy than Howie Roseman had. You mentioned it. Can those guys, can the edge guys be good enough? Otherwise, though, I think you're onto something that the schedule, I think, is overall going to be pretty favorable, especially if we're projecting the Cowboys to be worse, then it's suddenly the easiest division in the league. You get the Carolina Panthers and the entire NFC South out of division. I don't hate that at all. Some of the out of division games, like just because of their schedule, like I'm in on the Eagles maybe being a 1 seed, but it could go in a million different directions.